Thank you, Madam President. I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant of Arms be instructed to bring in the absentee members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is adopted. Remaining under motions and resolutions, will move to the third order of business. Messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Madam President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation report of the Conference Committee on House File Number 140 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. House File Number 140, a bill for an act relating to education. House File 140 is herewith transmitted to the Senate. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the foregoing recommendations of the Conference Committee report on House File 140 now be adopted and that the bill be repassed and amended as amended by the Conference Committee.
To that motion, Senator Pratt.
Madam President, I have a handout for conferees, or I'm sorry, for members that summarizes the Conference Committee report. Members, we passed this off the Senate floor a few weeks ago, went in the Conference Committee with the and really had a good working session. A number of changes came through. I believe it's a stronger bill than it was when it left the Senate the first time. And I'll just touch on a couple of the key changes that were made. Madam President, this bill now it sets up the professional educator Licensing and Standards Board. When it left the Senate floor, it was 9 members. When it coming back, it is now going to be 11 members. On the back of the sheet that's being sent out, it shows you the current lineup or the current setup and the recommendations. So it'll be 11 members, 6 teachers, 1 from the metro, 1 rural, 1 charter school, 1 from a related service such as a school nurse or counselor, 1 special ed teacher, and 1 teacher with experience in teacher prep, 1 superintendent that will rotate between rural and metro, 1 human resources director, 1 principal, which will rotate from rural and metro, one administrator from a special education co-op or intermediate district, and 1 member of the public who can be a former school board member. Madam President, I think most of the changes that were made by the Conference Committee happened in the tier structure. Tier 1 is still a 1-year license. This is renewed each year by the local school board. It's unlimited for career and technical education in shortage areas, and will be limited now to 3 years for core classes in a non-shortage area. This was language that we worked on with the Commissioner of Education. We still require a bachelor's for teaching core classes in all of the tiers. Tier 2 continues to be a grow your own tier and recognizes that people can be in the classroom while earning their teaching credentials, being enrolled in a preparatory program. Tier 3, originally when we left the Senate, that was really meant to be an initial license. Tier 3 has now become one of 2 standard licenses that we will allow teachers to hold. And this is where we'll see our out-of-state teachers with experience coming in and being able to teach right away. Tier 4 is the 5-year license, and I would say, if I had to summarize it, Tier 4 is really the full professional license. It's someone who's passed all of the tests, including the basic skills test, meets all the requirements of Tier 3, and having taught in the state for at least 3 years, have effective summative evaluations, and prove that they've been through a state-approved teacher prep program. Those are the, I would say those are the most significant changes in the bill. I want to thank Senator Kent and Senator Housley for serving on the conference committee with me. I want to thank the commissioner for her work. She and I had a conversation today, and I think it's fair to say that we all kind of walked away knowing that this was a compromise bill. I don't know that I said this before. You know, there were pieces that I wanted that I gave up. There were pieces that I accepted that I didn't want. But I also kept some provisions that were important to me. I truly believe this is a nonpartisan bill. I truly believe this is a nonpartisan bill. If I could, I'm sorry. And so, members, I'll be passing out a letter here to the governor from a number of stakeholders who have signed in support. The Minnesota School Boards Association, the Association of Metro School Districts, the Special Educators Association, the Principals Association, and boy, I can't read this. And the school administrators, the Association of School Administrators. And with that, Madam President, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Further discussion on the motion to adopt the conference committee report. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to thank Senator Pratt for his leadership and his willingness to always have conversations on these issues. This is a pretty complex bill, and there have been a lot of discussion over a long period of time, and I appreciate that there's always been an open door policy. I also particularly want to thank Senator Clausen, who has worked diligently on this issue for several years, and his work and dedication on this one has been invaluable. But as we look at where we are now and think about this bill and how we have ended up at this moment and how this is going to work moving forward for the state of Minnesota and the teachers of Minnesota and the students of Minnesota, I want to start by saying that I think we all agree, 100% of us agree, that we want great teachers in our classrooms. And I believe that that has been a consistent goal for everyone. But I think it's important to remember that this bill is a response to an ongoing set of challenges in teacher licensure in Minnesota for a long time. We had work done by the Office of the Legislative Auditor, and I'm going to take a few minutes to remind members of some of the key facts and findings and key recommendations, and I'm just going to pick a few. But among the key facts, I'll start by highlighting one of the things that is in the auditor's report, is that the Minnesota teacher licensure system is broken and needs significant changes. The findings include that we have two state agencies, the Board of Teaching and the Department of Education, who currently share responsibility for licensing teachers. This structure for licensing is confusing, which makes it difficult to hold either of these entities accountable for licensing decisions, and statutes blur the lines of responsibility and accountability between the two entities. The constantly changing and poorly defined teacher licensure laws make it difficult for Board of Teaching board members, Department of Education licensing specialists, and teacher candidates to understand Minnesota's teacher licensure requirements. Multiple exceptions to licensure requirements have led to loopholes and meaningless standards. In many cases, the Department of Education has not provided teacher candidates sufficient information about why it denied licensure applications, and the process the Board of Teaching requires candidates to follow when appealing licensure decisions is not consistent with the law. And just a few of the key recommendations that informed this entire process, which has gone on for several years, is that the legislature should consolidate all teacher licensure activities into one state entity, which we are doing in this bill. The legislature should clarify Minnesota statutes regarding teacher licensure requirements, which I believe we are doing. And the legislature should restructure the state's teacher licensure system to ensure consistency and transparency. And the auditor went on to recommend the legislature consider establishing a tiered licensure system, which is what is in this bill. In terms of the governance piece and the Board of Teaching, I believe this is an area where we've had great discussion and great compromise, and I believe we have the beginnings of a structure that, while it will be probably kind of bumpy to get it implemented, change is always hard, I believe we have a path forward that will work. It will work for teachers, it will work for districts, it will work for students. Then we've implemented the tiered licensure system, and that is where the greatest amount of concern and debate has taken place. This was in response to the legislative auditor's report and findings and recommendations, and as Senator Pratt has acknowledged, this represents a compromise. Nobody is happy with this. I'm not going to stand up here in any stretch of the imagination and say that I think that this aspect of this bill is perfect. But it's worth pointing out that efforts to allow greater information and access to teaching candidates who may have followed non-traditional paths is an important part of this. Because the system that we have had for decades works really well if you follow the traditional path to become educated and prepared and trained as a teacher. But if you come to this calling through any other sort of path, we don't make it at all easy. And that's not about whether or not you're qualified, it's about whether or not you're able to check some boxes. And so one of the things that I think is valuable in this version of this bill now is that we have created other pathways for other types of training and backgrounds. And these are highly skilled people. And I think that's worth remembering, because as our state changes and grows, it's hugely important that our teaching force change and grow to reflect that. And I believe that there are pieces of this bill that will help accomplish that, and I believe that is so important. One of the things that gets discussed about the teacher licensure recommendations in this report is that we are addressing a teacher shortage. And we do have teacher shortages. We have them in different parts of our state. We have them in certain content areas, and it is a real challenge. But I want to say that I don't believe that this bill is really going to solve that problem. I believe it will help districts that are facing that problem, but it is not going to solve the problem. And I will just point to a few very basic numbers to demonstrate that. At this time, we have 60,000 licensed teachers teaching in Minnesota. 60,000. We have 143,000 licensed teachers in Minnesota. So if you do that math, that means we have 80,000 teachers who are licensed but not teaching. A shortage of licensed teachers is not the problem. And it's important that we understand why teachers are either not coming into the field, or once they come into our classrooms and our schools, they choose not to stay. And we need to then address those problems. A lot of research has been done on this issue. There have been a lot of discussions. I'm not going to belabor a lot of those details now, but I just think it's important that we say, for the record, that while teacher shortages are real and important and our districts need to be able to address them, this does not really solve that problem. What we ultimately need to do is respect and support teachers. So in conclusion, when I look at this conference report and where it stands, and just speaking specifically to the tiered licensure part at this point, in Tier 1, we have made significant progress, and I appreciate that there has been substantial compromise, but I do believe it does not go far enough in terms of making sure that we are ensuring that we have qualified teachers in our classrooms. Similarly with Tier 3, there was an effort to put some language in there to make sure that every Tier 3 licensed teacher has been through an approved teacher preparation program. And I support that, and I believe we need to keep trying to figure out how to make that happen. Another element that is outside the scope of this bill, but it is related, is that we will need the funding necessary to handle this governance transition to be included in the final E12 bill. There are a couple of other specific concerns. In Tier 2, we really should have cultural competency addressed. That got dropped out of, from the House bill, which I think was very valuable. So that said, members, I stand here today recognizing the good work that is done here, but recognizing that we have a long way to go. So members, as you think about what this means for our state, please factor in all of these concerns. Thank you.
Senator Wiger.
Thank you. Madam President, I rise respectfully to oppose adoption of the conference committee report. I very much respect and appreciate the hard work by Chief Conferee, Senator Pratt, and the other conferees. And I served on a task force over the summer and fall to help develop some of the initial recommendations. That said, there has been progress. And just to cite a couple of good things, we now have in here a structure for an independent licensing board. Before it was divided into two groups, Board of Teaching, the Department of Education. It was confusing. It was inefficient. As the legislative auditor pointed out, we needed to get a better process. We have that. However, even with the one structure, we put a death sentence to anyone that now serves on the Board of Teaching to the majority for even applying to serve on it again. I don't believe that's fair to those people. Two people could ultimately serve. These would be gubernatorial appointments, but ultimately this body, the Senate, would have to approve. But to just put a gag and say the majority cannot reapply, I think is wrong. But I want to praise the fact that there is an independent licensure board, because there were proposals, members, that would not have treated it that way, and so it's come to improve, and I appreciate that. Additionally, on the tiered licensing system, I had really hoped we could close the loophole more on, and I'm not going to get into each of the tiers, but on the first tier, where there can be the 3 times and then continued approvals for waivers if you do not meet the exact qualifications, but there's a need to hire someone in special areas. This can go on and on and on, and I believe it really dilutes the overall quality that parents expect, that fellow teachers expect, and it undermines our ability to get at the root cause of teacher shortage, something that Senator Kenton had referred to. And that means, frankly, that to recruit more people to go into teaching, and we're at a low right now in our state for young people wanting to go into teaching, and that's in part because of the pay, as we struggle to try to get a 2% on the formula now, with districts looking at cuts if we don't meet that. Teachers wondering about that are in the profession as on the stability of their pension, wondering about the stability of their job on the outcome of how students might do on a test where they didn't have a direct involvement on. There's a lot of anxiety out there that gets at some of the real root causes as to why more people aren't going into teaching. And we need to address that on a more comprehensive basis. So in Tier 1, I believe it's too big of a loophole. It needs to be addressed. It also puts a teacher that could be conceivably in a team with others that is not licensed, not getting the same benefit package. They're not a part of the union if they're going to go in through this Tier 1 route. And I think that's demoralizing. Ultimately, when you're a part of that staffing team, when you have different sets of benefits. So we need to correct the Tier 1 part. We need to make some additional improvements, I believe, on the structure. And we need to ultimately provide the money. There's no money in this. Everyone expresses concern about unfunded mandates, and we had approximately $3.3 million in the K-12 omnibus budget bill, which was vetoed. But right now, it's a wish, it's a hope for the new licensing board in terms of how much it's going to get. Moreover, key to the reforms in this is mentoring and evaluation. Those are very good things. That costs money. And there's no appropriation, even in that vetoed K-12 bill, for that. So we need to address the financial wherewithal for districts to implement that. So, Senator Pratt, conferees, members, you're making progress, but this is not quite ready. We can improve it. We will improve it. And members, at this point, I urge you to vote no.
Senator Isaacson?
Thank you, Madam President. I have mixed feelings about Senate File 4. Is that right? Or are we calling it by the House File? 140? Excuse me. I have mixed feelings, and I remember a couple years ago when we began to talk about this issue of licensure when I came in. So I think it has been going on prior to that, but when I entered into the conversation when I was in the other body, and some of the questions that were going on, and then the OLA report came out and talked about that there are some serious problems with the way it's being done, and it's very confusing. And I think the bill does an adequate job of addressing some of that. I have to compliment my friends across the aisle. I think they really focus putting the licensing under one spot, getting rid of the patchwork of legislation that's gone on in the past to make it more confusing. So in that sense, I think that the bill does a good job, and I'd compliment them on the work, and I think it's nice to see some bipartisanship going on there, and I appreciate that. What I have a problem with is that's not the only narrative that I've watched occur in education with some of the advocates on both sides of how we're leading our K-12 system. And this bill has some parts to it that are awfully similar to ideas that I've heard in the past from folks that I desperately disagree with about what's important and how we value our teachers and what our students need. You know, this bill kind of begins at a premise of accepting an argument that I don't think is over yet. This bill begins at the premise that, you know what, we need to bring more teachers in, and that's part of what we're trying to address is how do we give alternative licensure, how do we get more people to come out and teach? And I think Senator Kent said it best when it isn't a matter that there aren't teachers there, it's a matter that we can't fill the positions. And what this bill does is it puts us in a spot with these tiers to allow some folks who are community experts to come in and teach. And I don't necessarily have a problem with community experts teaching in our schools. I have a problem when they're more than the exception. It should be the exception, not the rule. That shouldn't be the norm. And that's where I think this tiered system gets us into some trouble. On top of that, I feel like it doesn't present a balanced approach to providing our students with the kind of teachers we need them to have to be successful moving forward. And Senator Wiger hit on this and kind of stole a little of my thunder, but I can appreciate what he was saying, that when I say that it is beginning with the assumption of an argument we've finished already, is this. I believe the real problem here is that we're not adequately paying and supporting our teachers to the point where we see them wanting to be valued, feel valued, and want to stay in their profession. The alarming number of people that leave the profession is just, it's terrifying. It's terrifying for our schools, it's terrifying for our kids, and it's frankly terrifying for Minnesota's future. We cannot afford that kind of attrition. Why does that exist? Well, it isn't just about what salary step level they have or how much they're making. It's about the entire experience of their job. Now, I'm sure some of you are familiar with what we see or have known friends or even taught yourself about what that experience is like. But it's a consuming job. It's a consuming job that demands a lot of you beyond just 8 to 5. It's a consuming job that demands money from you because you want to make sure your students have what they need, and teachers often pay for those things. It's a consuming job because you're responsible for their well-being and their education. And I don't know that they're valued that way, and I certainly know they're not paid to the level of what we want to see. And I am firmly of the belief that the previous argument we should still be having is, why aren't we paying them what they deserve? Why aren't we giving them the environment to be successful in? Now, I've watched the legislature over the last 15 years legislate a lot of different mandates and ideas, and I've seen some of the results of that have not always been that great. And I tell you that when we begin to micromanage other people's business, we tend to get ourselves into trouble. I am not comfortable with a teacher's license that allows someone who doesn't have pedagogical training to continue to teach in a high school, junior high, or an elementary school. That just isn't how this should work. When we think about what we need and how teachers are developed, we have to be rewarding teachers to be there. In any other business, you have to pay more to get the talent that you want. Now, I can understand in 2011 and 12 when we were dealing with the deficit and everybody has to tighten their belts, and that's understandable. But we're not in that spot right now. We're not. And so instead what we're doing is we're looking at a bill that's going to ask us to, in my opinion, water down the talent pool of teachers coming in rather than taking responsibility for our constitutional mandate, which is to take care of the teachers we have and recruit more based on having a positive environment for them to go to. This bill does not do that. That's where this bill falls short. And so for me, it's hard to support a bill when I don't think it actually makes our education system better. We need to support our teachers. We need to give them what they need to be successful. Because here's the thing, folks. If our teachers are valued and we are recruiting them to a job that's fulfilling and paying them a wage that can allow them to be happy and within the middle class in America or in Minnesota, our students are going to fare better. Then our state fares better. It's just common sense. We seem to be going in the other direction. When we look at how much we're offering on the formula and we pretend not to exist, that inflation doesn't exist, for me, that's really problematic. That's problematic because it doesn't give the schools what they need to be successful. Yeah, I know it's expensive. That's the nature. Education is expensive. That's part of our mandate and our responsibility as a state. But ignorance is way more expensive. And if we don't take the time to take care of our teachers and take care of our students, we're going to be paying down the road by a lot more, not only in just quality of life, but also in money to try to fix it. So I can't support this bill. It's a good start. I don't want to see us continuing to allow or even ever allow people who don't have the background in teaching to be in perpetuity teaching in areas where they're not going to be held accountable in Tier 1 or Tier 2. I want to see people who are licensed, who have been trained, who know what they're doing in the classroom. And we just don't have that, and this bill doesn't get us there. So I'm going to have to say no, respectfully. I appreciate the work that's been done, and I hope that this is the ending spot, but there's more to come. Thank you.
Senator Housley.
Thank you, Madam President. I was honored to serve on the conference committee, and also I was part of the study group that got together over the last year. And this is the bill that is the result of all of the hard work that was put in by the conference committee, and especially Senator Pratt and the representative. It is not a perfect bill, but no side ever can get absolutely everything that they want. This was a lot of hard work. There has been roadblocks in the state of Minnesota to get your teacher. We have a shortage of licensed teachers. First, one of the roadblocks is we had two state agencies. We had the Board of Teaching and the Minnesota Department of Education, which made it confusing for teacher candidates. They didn't always get sufficient information as to why their application was denied. Also, the system wasn't transparent and clear. Both teacher candidates as well as school administrators were confused at the whole process. So we did get together and we did the study group and to provide accountability and to get some answers to help get more teachers in the state of Minnesota. And so through this, the professional education, it's a hard one, PELSB, Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, is what came out of this. And it is supported by a lot of stakeholders, the school districts, the charter schools, school administrators, that's superintendents, and your principals, the Minnesota Business Partnership, the Chamber of Commerce, and education reform advocates strongly support this reform and restructuring of teacher licensure. There is, Senator Isaacson, the Tier 1 is what we have set up. It's very, very clear to get your license. And the Tier 1, we're encouraging teachers to continue on to get their Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. And if another teacher who already has a license comes forward, they have to hire that teacher with a Tier 2, 3, or 4 license ahead of a Tier 2. So what you said isn't completely accurate. I am very, very proud of the work on this committee, and that this bill that was a complete compromise by everybody on the committee and the commissioner. So I do encourage a yes vote on this because it is a good bill. This reform is good, and going forward in the state of Minnesota, this will encourage more teachers. Thank you.
Senator Isaacson, to that point, exactly.
Thank you. Just for a second on that, if we had a lot of folks coming in from 3 and 4, this wouldn't be an issue, right? And so even if that is the case, and best case scenario, more talented teachers come in, clearly that's the problem. And so you're really illustrating the point here. The point is that we're not paying enough to get those folks to come in or stick around. And that's what we need to be doing in Minnesota. Thank you.
Senator Wickland.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to rise to speak. I did vote for this bill as it left the floor, Senator Pratt's bill. I do think that there are significant modifications that are necessary to the licensure system, and I believe that the bill, the conference report coming back, does address some of those, clarifying responsibilities and implementing a better structure for the licensure system. I do think it is incredibly important that we do clarify for potential teacher licensees a process that they can understand and follow and know that they will be working towards getting a Minnesota teacher's license. I did have concerns as it left the floor. I had concerns about the Tier 1, the unlimited renewals, and I had concerns about some of the other provisions that had to do with the structure of the board. And I am sorry that I feel that coming back to the floor with this conference report, I really can't support it going forward. And I really think that more work should be done on the tiers, especially Tier 1 and Tier 3. My strong concerns relate to the fact that it indicates that if you're looking for a teacher in a shortage area, that then there are unlimited numbers of renewals. I understand that we need an emergency process for districts to follow to get teachers in different areas, and I understand that we have seen areas where teachers are desperately needed and it is difficult to hire them. But I don't think that having a process in place that says that these can be renewed for an unlimited number of times in a shortage area is really getting us closer to solving this problem. I think it is going to potentially put more teachers who are underqualified in classrooms where we have students who desperately need a highly qualified and trained teacher. Minnesota right now, I looked up to see how many different shortage areas, teacher shortage areas that we have designated for this school year. There's over 30 different areas that are indicated as teacher shortage areas. So I think that the Tier 1 definition and the renewal process really I think that's something we need to address before we go forward with this proposal. I also have concerns about Tier 3. Tier 3 also indicates that teachers from out of state can come in if they're in good standing from that other state, I assume, and then with 2 years teaching experience. I think that really doesn't provide us enough assurance that these teachers will have the appropriate education. I think a teacher preparation program, an assurance that they have passed classes and have demonstrated their abilities in the area of pedagogy, I think is extremely important for Minnesota classrooms, for the students to know that the teachers are coming in with that. I was just reading the article about Arizona. They just passed a bill where there's going to be no requirement for teaching experience or a teaching preparation degree. Teachers can come in without that and teach. How are we going to be able to make sure that if people are moving around the country, that we can be assured that they have had proper coaching and training when they come into a Minnesota classroom? I think that the structure of the board has somewhat improved, and I think it's helpful that at least a couple members of the current board can continue on. I think that it should be allowed to be more than that. But I think these two areas that having to do with the tiers are really so problematic for me that I don't think it's appropriate to go forward at this time. I'm also very concerned about the funding. Funding is not, we don't know where the source of funding is at this point. And we also don't know if this mentorship requirement for districts to provide mentorship to the different teachers in the different tiers. I believe the tier 1 even, they're supposed to be providing mentorship. But there's no funding for that at this point. So I think we really need to be careful about what other conditions we're putting on school districts. If we were going to really truly address teacher not having enough teacher candidates, I think we would be ensuring that we were providing adequate funding for our school districts at a level that is adequate, 2% on the formula, and we would be funding, making sure that special education funding, the cross subsidy is reduced so that school districts can be relieved from feeling some pressure because of all the needs that they need to serve. So as a school board member, I certainly felt that school boards and districts are in a position to make decisions about hiring. However, I think also as a daughter of a lifetime teacher, a parent of a current teacher, I just can't endorse this report moving forward at this time without further work. And I hope that Senator Pratt will continue to address these issues as it goes forward. Thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to put the Senate under call.
Senate is under call. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my intention that the Senate remain under call for the rest of the bill. I hereby request that the proceedings of the call be dispensed with and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion does prevail. Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. At first, I was for this bill, the relicensure component of it. I thought it was a perfect balance between the art and the science of teaching, something that's pretty hard to accomplish. And the licensing and relicensing of teachers does need some reforms, many of which are found in this bill. And yes, teachers are leaving by 1/3 within their first 5 years. And the tier system is an attempt to fix this teacher shortage. And yet, you may ask, why am I voting no? If there was a shortage of electricians or firefighters or police officers or nurses or plumbers or lawyers, I don't think we'd be looking at ways to make it easier to enter those professions. We would be asking the question, why are 1/3 of our plumbers and electricians and firefighters and nurses and lawyers and police officers leaving the profession? That would be the question we would be asking. So what is it about education that we do it like this? Does it reinforce the old adage, those that can do and those that can't? Wait, I can't even bring myself to saying it. If this bill passes, There will be a teacher shortage, and believe me, it'll be a lot worse than the current teacher shortage. Because when community experts start filling our classrooms in September, and they find out that we have papers to grade till midnight, and curriculum meetings that go till 5 on Fridays, and classroom management issues, and safety and discipline issues, and instructional pedagogical, took me a while to learn how to pronounce that, let alone what it meant. And when they have to show up for parent-teacher conferences, and Lord help them when they're told you can't go potty until the bell rings. Lastly, as if to add insult to injury, the lower tiers are not allowed to participate in collective bargaining. Is this the first attempt to destroy one of our most cherished unions? Time will tell. If the goal is to lessen the teacher shortage, let's not look at why 1/3 leave after the first 5 years. Let's begin to look at rather why 2/3 continue to stay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have not served on the Education Committee this year. I served my first 4 years in the Senate. I've heard some comments today about the rules we're imposing upon school boards and this and that, and quite frankly, that's been a consistent problem of the legislature for a long time. I could talk to you about a number of rules that we'd like to promulgate for our school districts, and those that served on with me on the Education Committee might remember me making that speech a few times in committee. But today I look at this bill and I see that we are responding, quite frankly, to a request that has been given to us by our school boards. You know, in my part of the world, quite frankly, there are many of these positions that they cannot find people to teach in those particular slots. It has become a real problem. Over the years, in previous years, the legislature had set up hopefully some plans that that would help to bring about teachers through various ways. And quite frankly, in some of those instances, the department never actually even put the rules together for those to be accomplished. And so what we're doing today is we are responding to a need that our school districts have. And I have heard many people say, including the author of the bill, that yes, there are things that they would like to be different. But I think that it is important that we step forward and that we take this first step and respond to the needs that our school districts have right now. Because those spots that are going unfilled right now are not probably going to get filled, at least in my neck of the woods, are not going to get filled tomorrow or next year if we don't pass this bill. They're going to be out there open, and there are going to be very real needs that remain for our school district, and going to be very real needs, more importantly, for our students that are not being met. And so I think that this is a great first step for us to take. You know, quite frankly, I have two 15-month-old grandchildren, so I'm actually becoming quite an expert on first steps as you watch them try to grow and to move forward. And I think, quite frankly, we are achieving a first step here in this process, and it's important that we take it. Because if we don't take it, quite frankly, next year we'll find another reason that we can't support it again, and then another, so that basically the status quo remains. And I think it is important that we vote for this bill and that we tell everyone that we are intent upon solving this problem here in Minnesota. And I ask you to join with me in voting for this bill.
Senator Eaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I stand as the proud daughter of 2 master-level elementary school teachers, and I think this bill is an insult to them. They did the preparation, they helped teach their students, they were dedicated, and I'll tell you, they weren't well paid. You can't solve the opportunity gap by creating a separate lower standard for teacher preparation for regions with high levels of racial disparity. We have enough problems with the graduation rate. We have too many people of color not graduating. And this would just put a lot of unprepared teachers in those schools and teaching those kids. Minnesota's always prided ourselves on having the best teacher prepared programs in the nation. We recently received an award for that. And there's the no questions asked reciprocity is just a national race to the bottom. It's, I'm sad to say I can't support this. I can tell you from experience that having grown up with 2 teachers, that job satisfaction, inadequate administration support, low pay, isolated working conditions, poor student discipline, lower salaries, and lack of collective teacher influence over school decisions were the big issues that affect teachers. Want to pay them better, want to make sure they're supported, and make sure that they have the skills and the tools that they need to excel as a teacher. And smaller class sizes wouldn't hurt. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I've been very honored to serve a district of 15 school districts in southern Minnesota. And this issue came up last year, and I put an amendment on to Senator Wiger's education bill. And I believe Senator Wiger was the only one in this chamber that did not vote for that amendment to allow teachers to come across the border. Because when you have school districts, every single one of these 15 school districts, their biggest issue is not being able to get teachers to apply for the job. So one of my school districts, Martin County West in Sherburne, Minnesota, who actually has still dial-up in the area, could not get one application for a 5th grade teacher. Not one application, and that has not improved at all. So you can imagine how disappointed I was when I had to go home and tell my school districts, Martin County West and all of the other ones around these small little school districts, that we were going to study the issue. And you all supported that amendment last year. But right now you're saying you can't support a conference committee report that many of you have worked on this in this chamber, to provide some relief and provides a tool for these school districts to attract the teachers from across the border, or to attract other teachers to come in and serve these children and educate our children. So members, we cannot afford to send this back and get it vetoed or whatever you're expecting it to do, because it's not perfect. It is a bill that will provide relief to these many school districts, especially out in greater Minnesota. So please vote for this conference committee report. It is a good report, and please help those school districts out that are really suffering on something they have no control over.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'd like to make just a couple of comments based on what I've heard. We've had community experts in the state of Minnesota since the mid-90s, and I'm not aware of any complaints from those community experts. But there's no real pathway for them to pursue a profession in education. Senator Wiger's exactly right. We don't provide these Tier 1 teachers any sort of job security. Their job is posted every year. And if we can find a higher rated, higher licensed teacher, then they lose their job. We did that intentionally. We did that because we don't want them stuck in this community expert role. We want them to move on and become professional educators through this Tier 2 license. Now, we also had testimony during the conference committee that the Board of Teaching is processing over 1,000 of these applications every year. And over the last 5 or 6 years, during the tenure of the executive director, 50 have been declined. 50. Working with the commissioner, we added some additional criteria into the Tier 1. We added in that upon renewal, they would have to take a content test, just like any other teacher that's going into the classroom. We gave the Pelsby board more authority to approve or deny these applications, and we limited the unlimited renewal to career tech ed and those in shortage areas. Mr. President, this is not meant to correct the teacher shortage. This is meant to remove some of the hurdles that our local school districts are facing in putting qualified people in front of the classroom. When I joined this body from being on a local school board, I said I wanted to make sure that we had policies that encourage student achievement. We had a great teacher in the classroom, stable, reliable funding, and community involvement. And we are committed to keep, Senator Nelson has been committed, and Representative Loon said today, they are committed to fully funding the fiscal note for this transition, including building a new system for the Board of Teaching. But let me talk a little bit from the 2017 Teacher Demand and Shortage Report from the Department of Education. 22% of the teachers that hold licenses are retired. 12% were not offered employment for reasons other than staff reduction. 2% are teaching outside of Minnesota. 2% have found other education or in another educational opportunity. 16% are in fact teaching in another district. So this isn't about correcting the teacher shortage. This is about this is about making sure that we can get people in the classroom to lower class sizes. And I'm glad Senator Wickland brought up about being a school board member, because I served as one, Senator Wiger served as one. And I can tell you that not one school board member and no district administrator that I ever met would keep someone in the classroom that wasn't doing the job. As a son of a teacher, 40 years in the profession, I saw the extra work that's done, and I know the hard work that they do. I watched my mom stay up late many, many nights grading papers, reading essays, putting in grades, parent-teacher conferences, talking to parents, and yeah, sometimes dealing with the personal issues that kids bring to school. We ask a lot of our teachers. This is the first time the state of Minnesota actually has a progression from tier to tier to tier to make sure that we have qualified teachers. And we want those teachers in Tier 1 to be uncomfortable. We want them to go on and take pedagogy. We want them to go on and get their masters and teach concurrent enrollment in our high schools. We want them to be the greatest teachers ever. And so we make it a little uncomfortable for them. No, not a little, very uncomfortable for them to stay in Tier 1 so that they make that progression. This is a good bill. This is a nonpartisan bill. I hope it gets a nonpartisan vote.
Senator Rude.
Mr. President and members, I want to thank Senator Pratt and all of those who worked on this bill. You know, my parents were also teachers. My mom got her teaching certificate in the mid-1930s. That's all you needed then, was a teaching certificate. And she taught in a country school. She lit the fires. She shooed out the mice. And she was very proud of her profession. But you know, she taught for, 30, 40 years? She taught country school. She taught in Iowa. She taught in the Robbinsdale School District. She taught for many, many years. She was so proud of her profession. And you know, she never stopped working on her profession. She never stopped working from that little certificate she had to after the war she went to the University of Minnesota and got her teaching license. And after that, she worked every year in summer school because she was proud of being a teacher and she wanted to be a better teacher. And as the licensing requirements changed, she went to school and she changed. And she was proud of the fact that she always continued on that path of education because it was important to her. And she got her master's degree from the University of Bemidji in her late 60s, just before she retired. But every time the licensing changed and something new happened and education moved forward, so did she, and so do the teachers of today. That's what they do. They're proud of their craft. My dad was in industry for many, many years, and when North High needed what we called then a shop teacher, they hired my dad because he was proficient in the auto mechanics and in the machine shop and in the cabinet making. And he came from industry, and they needed him, and they were glad to have him. And so, folks, I ask your support of this bill because as we progress and the teaching profession has progressed, licensing has changed, and our teachers has changed, and education has changed, and it's up to us to change with them and with our students and what they need. And so I ask you to support this bill because it progresses as education and our teachers progress. And I thank you to all the members of this committee and the conference committee and Senator Pratt for having the foresight to bring this forward. Thank you.
Senator Clausen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a few comments, and some of these things are perhaps a repeat, but I served on a commission that worked in the summer and the fall initially to look at the teacher licensing issue, and then I've had many discussions over the last several weeks about the bill that you see before you. And as Senator Kent had earlier talked about the legislative auditor's report, there were two key items there that needed to be addressed. One was a governance issue, and we've talked about that we have in the past had two agencies or government entities that were working on teacher licensure, the department and then also the Board of Teaching. So that issue has been resolved. And then the second issue is really looking at what they recommended, some type of a tier license. And we actually had a tier license previously, but we never called it that because we never sat down to try to organize it and put in a structure that was transparent to people, and that was what was really causing a lot of the problems we were having. But if you look at what has changed, well, you look at Tier 1, there's been a lot of discussion about Tier 1 and a lot of complaining about the Tier 1 situation. As a former high school principal, I've hired community experts. I've also hired people on waivers. They usually were situations where there was a late resignation. We posted the position, couldn't find a qualified teacher. And sometimes we had people from the community who step forward and apply knowing they didn't have a license. Other times we had a recommendation from one of our faculty members saying, I have a friend, I think they'd be a great fit. We always hired those people with the intention it was a 1 year because we always posted the position and looked for a qualified, certified teacher that next year. There's been some discussion about mentoring. Well, in today's world, the new teacher evaluation process, one of the requirements is some peer work with other teachers. That's a mentoring process. We have professional learning teams. That's also a mentoring process. So I don't think that's really a major issue that cannot be resolved in our schools. I think the question comes up on that Tier 1, we can renew for 3 years, and then we have to ask the question about what if we can't find a teacher? What if you're in an area, a shortage area, what do you do if you can't find a teacher? This group was asked to solve a problem. I haven't heard anyone come up with another solution for an area where there's a shortage of teachers, and what do you do after year 3 and you can't find a teacher? What do you do? Because you've invested to some degree in that person, and now you're looking for another person But what if there is no certified teacher? So I think that's not a bad provision in the bill. There's also been a lot of discussion about the Tier 3, and that's back on page 35. And I think one of the things there that people need to understand, there's been a lot of discussion about item 6. It talks about a passing score on all licensure examinations and then 5 years of teaching experience as a teacher of record in any state. What we don't talk about is that is one of 6 criteria. You have to meet one of 6. So that's one of the criteria that you could meet. And in my experience, in looking at the others, which comprise of completion of a Minnesota-approved teacher preparation program, completion of a state-approved teacher preparation program that includes field-specific student teaching equivalent to field-specific teaching in Minnesota, approved teacher preparation programs, submission of a content-specific license portfolio, which we always had in the previous bill, a professional teacher license from another state, evidence that the candidate's license is a good standing, 2 years of teaching experience. We have some Teach for America programs that would qualify for that. Then you get a number 5, 3 years of teaching experience under T2 license, evidence of summative teacher evaluation that did not result in placing or otherwise keeping the teacher on an improvement process permanent to sections that are quoted. And then finally, you get to the last one, a passing score on all licensure examinations and 5 years of teaching experience as a teacher of record in any state. And I would say that's the last, that is the very last criteria that a teacher would use in Minnesota to become certified. And really, the Tier 3 takes into account one of the biggest complaints that we've had here in Minnesota is getting out-of-state teachers certified. That has been that we've had lawsuits on it. That has been the biggest issue, and I think Tier 3 accomplishes that task. So with that, I think that, I hope people have taken a good look at really reading and analyzing what this bill does. I think there's a lot of good pieces in it, and I don't think we really have veered too far away from where we were in previous years, but we've certainly in the tiers organized it in a way that I think people can understand now what they need to do in order to be certified in Minnesota, and gives them a good foundation on how to proceed to get a license in Minnesota. So, thank you.
Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I rise to ask the question regarding one part of the bill, and again, I'm going to go back to echo what some folks have said in this chamber. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this, yet there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And when we look at the root cause of why there aren't any new teachers coming to get licensed in the state of Minnesota, the root cause can go back to why you go from 1 year of getting 1,200 people that applied for their licensure, followed up by the next year only 400 people applied for that. So the question that needs to be asked out there is, what are we doing in under higher education to assure that we're attracting folks on the college level, and what are we doing to assure that we're attracting people that come into play for this position of teaching? That's a question I think that has yet to be completely answered. Although we start to get to that, I believe that this tiered 1, and I'm not going to spend the rest of the day talking about tier 1, tier 2, but I believe what you're doing is you're just touching the basis of that, and you're not really addressing the root cause. And let's get to the root cause. Let's really have that. So I would hope, as you continue this conversation forward, that you go and ask the question of root cause. And while you're asking that question, it reminds me of a couple of teachers I know, Mona and Renee, and they're both working within the special education field. And when you're talking about the new board reviewing the special education licensure, remember, folks, you're driven by a federal law that says the unique and individualized needs of a child and their disability and how that disability affects their education. That was consistent in '74. It's consistent right now in 2017. So as you go forward and you start to look at non-categorical ways of looking at licensure, you might want to ask yourself, what's the risk? And the risk is I'm not going to be identifying the unique and individualized needs of that child, because that's where due process rights come into play. And if you're going to put some mandates on expanding upon that and not really looking at the unique and individualized needs, then you're going to set up some districts for what I see some potential lawsuits. So as you have that conversation, senators, members, I would hope that we look at the bigger picture and the big system and ask ourselves the question, are we assuring that the unique and individualized needs? Because I sure don't want somebody that isn't licensed in my unique and individualized needs when it comes to education, which, by the way, last time I looked, it is a constitutional right within the state of Minnesota. We all agree to that, correct? We also agree that it is protected under law. And so as we go forward, folks, please, let's take a look at that and ask ourselves the question, let's not move this thing too fast, and let's not get loosey-goosey on this, but rather let's really look at this from a real systemic and a very fine point about, am I addressing the unique and individualized needs of a child, specifically a child with a disability, and how it affects their education. So members, I can't support this as it sits right now, and I would hope that we can go back to the drawing board and keep working on what we're doing. Thank you, members and Mr. President.
Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I stand before you humbled. And perhaps I'd like to just draw some clarification to my comments. And maybe I exaggerated a little bit, a lot like the fishing stories that are going around the chamber after the fishing opener. But Senator Wiger brought it to my attention. He did not vote for the amendment, and so did another 26 other members. But the amendment did pass. It did go on to the education bill, and my apologies, Senator Wiger. I wanted to make sure that I clarified that. But it did end up getting stripped out, I believe. Senator Wiger was very gracious about hearing the story of the school districts that are struggling so much with this teacher licensure, and I appreciate that. But again, members, I do think this is a very, very important bill. We can do a lot of great things for our school districts, but this is the #1 thing to keep them whole, keep them moving. They got to have a teacher in the classroom.
Senator Franson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in a way a bit open-minded and confused of what, first I voted for this bill when it came to the floor, thinking it was a good concept, knowing that we have this important issue that we face in Minnesota with the teacher shortage, with our gap in our achievers, with the race inequities that we face, with the challenges that we have as a workforce. And those are big, big challenges that we are facing, and we need solutions for them. So I voted for this bill thinking it would be a good concept, a good solution. But frankly, I don't have a mom and dad who's a teacher, so I don't have that perspective like many of you do. I just happen to sit next to a great one. And he is one of the finest in the profession. And lately, there isn't a place I go that Mr. Steve Swasinski has not made a difference in someone's life. He's inspired principals. He's inspired students to be teachers. He's inspired parents. And in his 30 years there teaching, I've asked him just today, and he said, you loved every minute of it. And that's the type of teacher that we need in Minnesota. We need someone to inspire. We need someone to be passionate about teaching. And frankly, we need someone who cares. And last but not least, we need them to be prepared. And as a lawyer, we don't lower the bar for lawyers. If you don't pass the bar, you don't practice. We don't lower the bar for teachers, for doctors or for engineers or for many other professions. So in this case, I know this bill has good intentions, but frankly, it's the wrong bill. And I do not feel comfortable lowering the bar when we need the best and the brightest to teach our kids, to close that gap, to prepare our workforce. And I will come back open-minded, and I respect for those members who are voting for this bill as a one step forward. I just don't feel comfortable in that step. I'd rather wait till we get a big leap and make a real difference and impact in the teacher shortage. So members, I encourage a no vote, and let's get more Mr. Swads in the classroom, not less. Thank you.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I rise to speak in favor of this bill. It is a fact that we do have that severe teacher shortage, and we know how important teachers are. We know that teachers are the most critical in-school variable when it comes to student achievement. And yet we have instance after instance where school districts are not able to fill the teacher vacancies. We also know that our teacher licensure system, and as has been talked about tonight, is broken. Not only is it broken, we didn't need the Office of the Legislative Auditor to tell us that, but it is broken. Let me tell you about my teaching license. When I came here from Iowa, my teaching license was severely cut short. I was prepared for kindergarten through grade 9 education and 1st through 6th grade special education in Iowa. But something about just moving 100 miles north into Minnesota, suddenly I wasn't prepared for those areas, and my teacher licensure was changed. Suddenly, I wasn't prepared to teach kindergarten according to Minnesota standards, and nor was I prepared to teach 7th and 8th and 9th grade in special education. So let me just say that it is a well-documented fact that our current system is broken. We know that Minnesota has lost a lawsuit because of our system, our teacher licensure system being broken. So clearly, members, the bill that we have before us today is definitely better than what we currently have in this state. And it is high time that we embrace and allow teachers from other states to come in to Minnesota and have an organized and well-defined manner in which they can become Minnesota teachers. Now, I could speak from my experience. I could tell you about my mom. She's taught for 32 years. I could tell you about my father. He was a teacher in education for 37 years. Teacher, principal, and superintendent. And so we know how important teachers are, and I appreciate the comments about teachers who inspire and change lives, and that's what teachers do. We touch the future. But members, as we debate this bill tonight, please do not allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. This bill deserves your vote today, and we are hopeful that we will get Minnesota on track so that we can help meet the teacher shortage that is so impacting so many of our schools in this state.
Senator Pratt renews his motion that the conference committee report be adopted. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is adopted. The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 140, a bill for an act relating to education, restructuring Minnesota's teacher licensing system.
Third reading. Final comments, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I want to thank Senators Wiger, Clausen, Housley, and Dames, as well as former Senator Dahl, for their work over the interim. They were great partners to have, and they put in a lot of time along with me on this legislative study group that really, and I would just make one correction to say there were three things we really needed to do, according to the legislative auditor's report. One was to consolidate the teacher licensure function into one entity, and we did that. to create a tiered licensure system. We've done that. But also, we had inconsistent laws that weren't very transparent. And what you'll find in this bill is we have really created a common language and pulled various teacher licensing provisions under one heading. We've reformatted the entire bill. I also want to thank Senator Kent and Senator Housley for their hard work on the conference committee. I again want to thank Representative Erickson, Representative Bennett, and Mariani for their work on the conference committee as well, and for the partnership of the Commissioner of Education. We didn't always see eye to eye, but it was good to work together and come to some agreements. Members, this is, I'll say it again, this is a non-partisan bill. Teacher licensing should not be a partisan issue. And I understand there are some concerns, but members, this is the most significant reform we've had in teacher licensing in the last 40 years. Since 1976, when this Board of Teaching was first constituted, we've come light years from where we were back in the mid-70s. We are now taking a look at the skills that a teacher brings to the classroom rather than looking at just what's on their transcript. And so, members, I encourage a red vote, and let's send a strong message to, or I'm sorry, a green vote. I'm sorry, I spent 4 years in the minority. I'm just getting used to this majority thing. So I encourage a green vote, and let's send a strong message to our school boards and our school administrators that we trust them to put a quality person in front of the classroom. And let's send a strong message to people moving into this state that they're welcome with the right credentials to become teachers in Minnesota, and not put so many hurdles in front of them that we drive them out of the profession. Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on House File 140.
Five-minute bill.
Yeah. Danny said he's doing his lawn care bill. What?
We'll never do another lawn care bill.
Can.
All those senators having voted who desire to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 36 ayes and 31 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.